Clyde Mandoin is a professional translator, game programmer, Legends of Localization founder, and MartOCX co-host. A game developer friend of mine recently hired a translation agency to translate his latest game into Japanese. I offered to skim through it and make sure everything was okay, and it turned out to be a sheer disaster. So I thought I'd write up a quick article for gamers and game developers who have dreams of releasing stuff in Japan someday. There's a common assumption that when you translate something from English into another language, there should not be any English left when you are done. Otherwise it would be an incomplete translation, right? And do you feel like you got cheated out of the money you spent on translation, right? If you are translating into Japanese, that assumption is wrong. English makes up a significant portion of the Japanese language today, and on top of that, English has been a major part of Japanese video games since the very beginning. Because of this long-lived connection between video games and English, Japanese gamers expect a certain level of English in their games. So when a game features no English at all, it feels very weird and awkward. This expectation and acceptance of English especially applies to menus, messages to the players, and other user interface text. If you are not familiar with how Japanese works, the two examples above might not seem out of place. But keep in mind that Japanese games regularly look like this. Lots of English on this selection screen. This is kind of similar to Problem Pound Key 1, but not exactly the same. If you have ever listened to Japanese video game voice acting, or listened to Japanese anime, you have probably heard characters shout words in sort of garbled English when doing special moves. For instance, we have all heard CHNRACTERSSHOUTS magic spell names using phonetic English. In those cases, the developer's code V easily used the Japanese words for firebolt, eruption, explode, windblade, and thunderbolt, but they did not. So if you end up turning every special term into fully translated Japanese, the result is likely to feel cheap and awkward. Here's a silly online comment about this phenomenon. In fact, I am not sure which game it's talking about, but it's probably referring to Hearthstone. Another example is Earthlock, which is often compared to Final Fantasy X and is a love letter to the genre. Unfortunately, the translators never really took this into account. So all of the phonetic English you do normally see in Japanese Final Fantasy games was fully translated out. Even basic terms like cure and dragon get this treatment. Problem Pound Key 1 and Problem Pound Key 2 on make or break name translations into Japanese, but they can definitely hurt the overall experience. You can easily avoid them if you and your translator have an open line of communication. These next issues can turn your hard work into a laughingstock. However, the Japanese language has some qualities to it that are not as clear-cut in English, particularly when it comes to entertainment. Different genders use different speech styles. Characters of different ages use different speech patterns. The language has multiple politeness levels that depend on the relationship between the listener and the speaker. Some occupations use stereotypically different language, etc. All of these things quickly add up. So if you hire a stranger to translate a giant text file of dialogue into Japanese, the result is probably going to be very bad, unless you provide lots of extra notes, screenshots, videos, and back-and-forth communication. Otherwise you get mods talking like demons, tough guys talking like little girls, etc. There is a sort of neutral Japanese, but it still comes across as polite yet sterile. Imagine you are a game dev, and you have just finished a game. You want to release it in Japan to get even more sales. But you do not know Japanese. So what do? You'd probably try to think of a friend or someone you know who could help, right? And then after that you might look around online for translation companies. Eventually, you get your game script translated and everything seems to be okay. But if you do not know the language to begin with, how do you know the translation is accurate? This is precisely how things like All Your Base and Room in the Night get made. The problem is that game translation is very different from ordinary document translation. So if you simply send off your text to get translated, wait a while, and then get the finished translation sent back to you, you are probably in trouble. Even more so if you use an all-in-one agency that talks about translating into 100 languages and handling a wide range of materials. Also, a good game translator will probably ask lots of questions about context, maybe so many questions that it gets annoying sometimes. If there is very little communication, then you can expect a lousy translation. There are lots more problems that can happen in an English to Japanese game translation. Singular plural issues, literally translating idioms, genuine translation mistakes, text that gets cut off, etc. The problems listed above are just some of the biggest causes of frustration that I have seen among Japanese gaming communities. So I hope that listing them here can help developers avoid translation disasters. More than anything, though, the quality of the Japanese translation, and any translation, ultimately falls to the developer. If you provide lots of notes about context, lots of info about how different characters should behave, lots of screenshots and videos of key moments, and just a bit there to answer lots of questions, the translation will end up pretty good. But if you just hand a bunch of text files to a random company that does not specialize in game localization, then you are on the way to destruction and have no chance to survive. Make your time. If you liked this brief look at how game translations in Japan can mess up, you will like this article about popular and infamous Japanese translations too. Crackdown 3 developer Sumo Digital has opened a new studio in Leamington, spot that will focus on the creation of mobile games. The new opening will be led by former CODMASTERS and C Chief Technical Officer Chris Southo. Prior to joining Sumo, Southo spent close to 15 years at Seagull, and founded and built the company's dedicated European mobile studio, Seagull Hardlight. The Leamington office will become the 7th studio in Sumo's umbrella, following the recent acquisitions of the rest developer, the Chinese rumored work-for-hire outfit Red Kite. In 2018, I experienced one of my biggest shifts in video gaming behavior over the past decade. Overall, the industry is going through some interesting changes with the introduction of Epic and Discord's game marketplaces, and an explosion of games available on Steam and no storefronts. Personally, it was a big change of me, because I moved in with my fiancé, not married, and overall had less time for my old gaming habits. Instead of playing mostly new games, I have played a mix of new and old games over the past year. Here are some of the trends in my gameplay habits that I noticed in 2018. I started working for Zynga in June, and shortly before then I started exploring mobile games, such as Words with Friends 2. My commute also changed over the past year, and I have more time commuting on the train that I can now spend playing games. One of the genres that I have kept on my phone throughout the year is match-3 titles, including Crazy Cake Swamp, Wonka's World of Candy, and Candy Crush Friends Saga. This is the first year that I really got into mobile gaming, and I have even started playing some of these games outside of my commute. Another trend in my gaming habits that I have noticed in the past year is playing games on easier modes. Since I have less time to play games, I want to get through games quicker, rather than constantly replaying sections of a game. I found myself setting the difficulty level on Wolfenstein 2nd to easy mode, so that I could make progress through the game more quickly.